بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم إنا نستهديك لأرشد أمرنا وزدنا علما ينفعنا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العظيم. In order for any ibadah to be accepted, there are two important components. Number one, as we understand, is ikhlas, sincerity, that what we do is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one else. If there's ikhlas in a person's ibadah, then Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the person the reward for that ibadah, and that will be a means of his high ranks in Jannah. And if it is void of ikhlas and sincerity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell the person that those whom you did it for the public eye, you did it so that so-and-so will say behind you that, oh, such a pious person. The people of your community, your musallis, everyone will say, oh, this was such a great scholar. So go ask them for your reward. You did it for them, so ask them for their reward. Obviously at that day, will that be possible? Everyone will be worried about themselves. The second aspect is the method of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we also refer to as the Sunnah. And as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us how to pray, how to perform Hajj, how to give zakah, how to fast, if in that method, in that way, the act is done, the ibadah is done, then it will be accepted. One word that we know in Arabic is ibadah, with the ba, ibadah. If you take out the ba, what word is that? It will be called adah. Adah meaning a habit. So what differentiates between a physical act only and ibadah is, number one, as we said, ikhlas is one component. The other is that a person does it in the method shown by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as it is accepted. That, in other words, is called fiqh. The fiqh of fasting isn't something which came up later. Rasulullah is the one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who revealed the fiqh of fasting. Allah ta'ala revealed the fiqh of fasting, Rasulullah explained it to us in the more details. And what ulama of the ummah do, that they distill that and they make it clearer and present it for us to understand and to practice upon. So the fiqh of fasting essentially is that I know I have to fast, I want to fast, I have the niyyah to fast, and I will be fasting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how do I make sure that my fast is corresponding to the fast of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's going to be important. Why? Because otherwise it won't be accepted. So in my eyes, it may be, something very minute. We'll do this, inshallah, it will come that a person has to fast from dawn, from subh sadiq, before the time of fajr comes. That has to be the last time a person fasts. But someone says that, yeah, but it's just 3 minutes, 2 minutes. It's a very small amount. Or yeah, I know that Maghrib is coming in at 7:20, for example, but I'll just open it at 7:19. I know that sunset is 7:20. For sure, I know it's 7:20, but I'm going to open it at 7:19 because it's just 1 minute. 1 minute is very small. So what is the status of his sawm? He fasted the entire time except that 1 minute. It'll be accepted or not accepted? It won't be accepted. Why? Because although in numbers, if you look at it in quantity and you look at it in this manner, then it may just look like something small, 1 minute. But if you look behind it, what happened here? that something which was supposed to be a pure ibadah for Allah Ta'ala, what happened here? This is a form of shirk. That he put his own desire, his own method of how he wants to do it, what he thinks is sufficient, he put that into it as well. The shirk isn't that a person just puts his head in front of an idol. This is also a form. That he thinks that I will please Allah Ta'ala as I want. That's also wrong. Because at the end of the day, who are you pleasing? You're pleasing yourself. Allah won't be pleased with that. Allah said, I will be pleased with if you do what? My Nabi Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has brought to you. So this is the backdrop, and this is what we need to keep in mind. That the ruhaniyah and spirituality of fasting will only be there also if it's done correctly. Someone said, I'm just worried about the ikhlas of it, and I have all the ikhlas. As far as this fiqh stuff, 1 minute here, 1 minute there, doesn't make a difference. No. It does make a difference. It's a huge difference. Why? Because it's not 1 minute that you're clocking to your work for your employer. That's a separate thing. This is for Allah Ta'ala. So we look at whose command it is. Not the amount, 1 minute, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, that doesn't matter. So Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, He is the one that revealed these ahkam and the fiqh of fasting, and Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam showed it to us. The very first thing that we understand is that what does it mean to observe sawm or fasting? So other ibadat we know are active ibadats, if you want to call it. Salah requires certain movements, qira'ah, tasbih, adhkar are done. A person says something, sometimes going to ruku', sometimes sajda, the qada. These are all movements. So a person can also visualize and see there's some ibadah being done over here. Even if a person, for example, is an non-Muslim, he'll see that there's something happening, he's prostrating, he'll put two and two together, okay, he's probably worshipping. They'll be able to realize that. Similarly, a person goes for Hajj, you can see it. All of these acts and the kind of Hajj, that person sometimes Arafah, making dua there, Muzdalifah, Tawaf is occurring, Talbiyah is being said. All of these are ibadah in which we do something. Even zakah, it's a one-time thing, but it's still an act. Whether you swipe your card or you hand over cash to someone, it's still a physical act that's being done. Sawm is the one ibadah that there is nothing to be done. Ibadatut tark, they say in fiqh. It's an ibadah of abstinence, staying away. That's why it's very closely related with zuhd and staying away from worldly things. That's how it gets translated, the taqwa. It gets translated into the taqwa, that we stay away from harm, from haram. So that's why the ibadah is also made such that you stay away from it. This ibadah has been made such that it's an ibadah training oneself abstinence, staying away. So that we translate that in the real world, if you want to call it, staying away from other haram as well. So we abstain with intention, having niyyah. Niyyah is necessary. If a person fasts, let's say the entire duration, before Salat al-Fajr till Maghrib, let's say even after that, he doesn't eat. But he had absolutely no intention. It just so happened, he woke up that morning, he was very busy, he rushed out, he got late for work, he rushed out. At work also he's busy, he has no water. Sometimes it happens, something comes about, a big event is coming, you're so busy with preparation, no one knows what's going on with food, no one worries about all of that. Or a person is in a very difficult time, so he loses appetite, he doesn't want to eat, drink, nothing. So like that, if a person, hypothetically, if he doesn't eat or drink or anything throughout the entire day, Maghrib also occurs. Then he realizes, oh, I didn't have a single sip of water today, let alone eating. Will he be rewarded for this fast? No. You can call it a fast if you want, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not a sawm. Why? Because there's no intention over there. So intention must be made. To abstain with intention from dawn meaning before the time of Fajr. So it's not from the time the sun rises, for example. So before that time, so it's in our masjid timetable, or a person from whichever masjid, very simply a person looks at the masjid timetable and sees that this is the Fajr start time. So if the Fajr start time says 5:10, for example, then you must stop eating before 5:10. Right? So a person should be cognizant about these things. Again, this is an ibadah, right? So we should be cognizant about it, that by 5:09 a person stops. When you see 5:09, then now it's like red zone. Make sure you're not eating after that. If you say, no, it was only 5, 10, and 30 seconds, again, it's not about the 30 seconds. The idea is that you're supposed to stop before that. As will come that partaking from suhoor is something important. A person should, whether you eat a day, drink some water, even a very minimum amount, that much should be done. From dawn to dusk, all the way till sunset. Once the sun sets, it's the time for adhan of Maghrib, then a person should do ta'jeelul fitr. Ta'jeelul fitr means that we hasten towards iftar. We hasten towards iftar. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ فَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ فِطْرِهِ وَفَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِ. And we see this, mashallah, that Rasulullah said a person who's fasting has two occasions of happiness. Number one, farhatun the fitri. He has happiness when it's time for iftar. You can see, this is something we witness every year, mashallah. At the time of iftar, there's a certain happiness a person has. It's not to say that you never saw food in your life, but Allah Ta'ala, Takween has made it such that there's a happiness, that we're happy that we observed this entire day of fast. Alhamdulillah, this great ibadah was fulfilled, and now we are opening our fast and we're doing iftar. And the other farha will be عند لقاء ربي. That's the major, the supreme happiness. When we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those that truly observed the fasting and Sawm as they ought to be observed, not just a mere, as we spoke about this, it wasn't a mere diet from food, but the true fast with the ruhaniyah and spirituality, everything that it comes with, then those people will have a happiness when they meet their Lord as well. So we abstain from three things. Number one, food. It doesn't matter how much it is. I just had a small snack. Again, the number doesn't, the quantity doesn't matter. Drink. The person abstains from water, drinking other things as well. And number three, any sexual gratification. All three, these two main desires, that of the belly and that of the carnal self, these are the two things which are halal in themselves, which are halal. Food is halal. A person can eat dates. What's wrong with eating dates? What's wrong with eating meat? What's wrong with eating bread? These are halal things. But for this training, this detox, if you want to call it, people go on detox diets. So this is a type of detox for the nafs. And lastly, sexual gratification. Now, when does fasting become compulsory? When do we start fasting? So, obviously, we understand that the month of Ramadan is when we fast. So, how is the month of Ramadan established? That either by sighting the new moon of Ramadan, Rasulullah ﷺ said that صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. The fast when you sight and see the moon of Ramadan. So at night, when it will be sighted, then at that night, inshallah, we will perform the Salatul Taraweeh, which will this year either be Friday night or Saturday night. Also, when the moon of Ramadan is sighted, then we should recite the Masnoon Dua of every new moon, every new month that starts. Allahumma ahillahu alayna bil yumni wal iman was salamati wal islam. That we make dua that this new month brings us barakat and blessings. Or by the completion of 30 days of Sha'ban. If the new moon is not sighted, if the moon is sighted, that means the previous month, Sha'ban, was 29 days. And if it's not sighted, the next day we will observe as a normal day of Sha'ban, and the 30th day, and then that night, the night thereafter will be Taraweeh, and the next morning, the next day we will be fasting. Who is fasting obligatory and fard upon? Number one, if all of the following conditions are found in an individual, he or she must fast. Number one, Muslim, obviously. For any ibadah, Islam, Iman is a condition. Number two, sane. A person has sanity. They're not what we call majnoon or insane. They understand what's going on around them. People who have dementia, for example, they would not be considered sane as per the rules of fiqh. Number 3, mature. Mature, yani baligh in Islamic fiqh. So when a person comes of age, boy or girl, then it's necessary, it's fard upon them to observe the fast as well. Now, it's not an excuse that, an exam is coming, or they're in school, or I have tryouts or practice or this or that. These excuses are not acceptable. This is an obligation. This is a fard. It's not something which you have a choice, optional, that you want to do, you do it, you can do it, you can't do it. No. This is fard. So, although the individual may be 13 years old and to you he may be considered still a kid, it's a bachcha, but in fiqh that is not considered, that individual is not considered to be a child anymore. And as far as fasting and things of this nature, he would have to fast. Number 4, healthy. What does healthy mean? Healthy means that a person is in such a state that fasting is not going to make him sick. Feeling hunger is one thing. If feeling hunger was an excuse, then some would not be obligatory upon us, right? And if a person says that every time I fast, I get a light buzz in my head, that's obvious. Your lunchtime has been delayed. You didn't have breakfast, so that's obvious. That's what Sawm comes with. That is part of the training. That's part of the detox. So a slight headache here, a buzz here, because you didn't have your day's chai, right? That doesn't change anything. Health means a serious issue that comes about. For example, people who are, depending also, some diabetic patients may be able to, if they change their insulins around, some maybe at a certain point that they are unable to. Different types. A person will have to consult with a Muslim physician and they'll have to speak about this. So healthy again does not mean that you're able to run the marathon or anything. Healthy just means that if by fasting a person goes into a sickness, a considerable sickness, then that person will be considered excused for that day only. It doesn't mean to say that anytime an excuse comes, then a person says, can I give the fidyah? The discussion of fidyah will come later as well. And the second to last condition, the person is a resident. Resident meaning he is not a traveler, musafir. A person who is actually traveling, whilst he is traveling, or whilst he is in the fiqhi state of being termed as musafir, that person does not have to fast. Now, does not have to fast doesn't mean that he cannot fast. Rather, if he fasts, it's better. Anytime a fast is made up later, even if it's allowed. If, for example, a person is in a situation where Sharia says that this person can do qada of it later, if it's allowed, then even in those circumstances, observing the fast during the month of Ramadan itself would be better. Why? Because those barakat will not be found outside the month of Ramadan. This isn't the ruling for those that are menstruating, for example. That will come later, inshallah. Women who are menstruating, they cannot fast. Not that they just don't have to fast. I'm speaking about those that do not have to fast in the month of Ramadan. For example, a traveler. A traveler does not have to fast. Now, a traveler means that he has begun his travel and he's considered to be in the state of being a musafir in Sharia. For example, a person wakes up and it's the day of Ramadan, one of the days of Ramadan. Now he has a business trip and his flight will be at, let's say, 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. Right? So this day, does he have to wake up and fast this day? Yes or no? That's the question. So he will have to fast. Because when the day started, he was not considered to be a musafir. He was not a traveler. Although he has a flight scheduled for later that day. So this day he will observe his fast. Now let's say, for example, he's on the flight and he becomes extremely nauseous and he really needs to have water. That's a separate issue. If he feels that he cannot make it for the rest of the day without taking a sip of water, then if he breaks the fast, it will be permissible. Permissible. I'm not saying he has to, he should. But if he does so, it will be permissible and he'll have to do qada of it later. And for sisters, they have to be free from menses or any postnatal bleeding. In these cases, as I said, it's not, here it won't be an option that a lady says that although I'm going through my days, still I would like to have the barakat and blessings of Ramadan, hence I will fast. This will be impermissible. Rather, it will be a sin if she does try to observe. Now, what are those things that break the sawm, that break the fast? The fasting breaks if any fast-breaking agent reaches the throat. And a person puts it in and it passes the mouth and it reaches the throat. Or the stomach, or the intestines via the mouth, nose, or rectum. So again, we said these are very specific rulings. The how something reaches the body, that also depends in whether the fast will be broken, number one, and number two, will there be any kaffärah? We'll discuss what the kaffärah is. Will any kaffärah become obligatory or not? So again, the mas'ala or the ruling is that when a fast-breaking agent reaches the throat, fast-breaking agent can be food, it can be something else. If it reaches the stomach, the intestines, via the mouth, nose, or rectum. Why are we saying this? Because if someone puts something into the ear, for example, that will not break the fast. If you put something through your ear, that will not break the fast. Now, that's obviously very dangerous. You shouldn't do something like that. But as far as our discussion here is, if someone is to ask that I put something into my ear, and obviously it's no longer, I can't take it out, did that break the fast or not? So we'll say it did not break the fast, but you should probably go to the emergency. Or sexual gratification. So that brings up the question, how about IVs? How are IVs administered? That through the blood stream over here and outside of, and it doesn't go through the mouth, nose, or rectum. So would that break the fast? It would not. Although a person may be getting nutrition through that, but despite that, because the method from which it's entering the body is not one which breaks the fast. So unnecessarily, if someone does that, that's obviously makruh. It will be disliked, he cannot do it, should not do it. Similarly, nicotine patches, it would be makruh, it's disliked, they should not do it. Would it break the fast such that it entails qada of it? No, that would not be necessary. Similarly, eye drops, suppository, eye drops would break, and eye drops would not break, and a suppository would break because it's going through the rectum. As we said, that something which goes through the rectum through the anal passage, that would break the fast. Here are some examples of when qada only becomes necessary. As I said, often people ask that, do we just have to make up the fast? Qada meaning, do you just have to make up the fast? Or do I have to give the kaffärah as well, which is the expiation for it? So what are some examples for only qada becoming necessary? Number one, mistakenly eating, drinking, or having intercourse. Khata or mistake, they are forgiven in Sharia. They are forgiven in Sharia, and the sin of it. The sin of it. If a person mistakenly did something, he will be forgiven. That's in its place. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there's there's no ruling attached with that. For example, if a person mistakenly breaks something of someone's, if you break something that someone owns, or we call it an accident, right? You hit someone's car accidentally, you did it. No one said it was on purpose. But does that mean to say you just say sorry and walk away? You broke the car, it's fine. I mean, you hit the car, you damaged it. So we will forgive you, that's one thing. But you still have to pay for the expenses, right? The damage that was done, that still needs to be paid for. So qada isn't to say that, that we say that, this is so difficult. No, there's nothing difficult about it. This is very harsh. There's nothing harsh about this. The idea is very simple. That mistake was done, it was forgiven. But now how do we make up for that? We broke someone else's glass. How do you make up for that? You hit someone's car. How do you make up for that? So mistakenly eating, drinking, or having intercourse. Mistakenly means that he was just rinsing his mouth, for example. He's doing wudu. He's rinsing his mouth. Now accidentally, some water goes down his throat. Forgetfully is different. Forgetfully will come to that. Forgetfully, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah is that was completely forgiven. That even qada will not become necessary. So mistakenly would mean, another example would be that you thought that subh sadiq is at a certain time. That you think there's still 10 minutes left for suhoor. Maybe you saw the wrong date. You saw the wrong date, that happens. So you think that I still have 10 minutes for suhoor. So a person continues to eat. Then he realizes that I was actually eating through the time. Or in iftar time, that you thought it was 7:20 is the time for iftar, but it turns out that it's actually 7:30. So at 7:20 you ate. Maybe you're inside a building, you couldn't see outside. If you're outside, you can see there's no sunset. You're inside a building, you think it's iftar time. So you mistakenly ate. So all of these circumstances, yes, he fasted most of the day, that's in its place. Yes, he didn't want to do it purposely, there was no evil intent behind it. But that doesn't change the fact that you didn't fast the entire time, or that you ate in the middle. That fact does not change. Hence the qada and makeup fast will be necessary. Or if a person consumes what does not give bodily benefit. Some people have this habit that they're writing with their pencil and they're chewing on the eraser tip. Now if the eraser tip goes down his throat, obviously that would necessitate qada. Or medicine taken by other than the mouth. So if a person takes a suppository or a nasal spray, for example, this will also break the fast. Coercion. Coercion meaning someone forced you into it. Some friends thought it was very funny, they held you down and put a bucket of water on you, and you drank the water. So now, it wasn't your fault, someone else did it. That's in its place. But you also drink the water. Right? So in this case, there will be no kaffärah. No kaffärah needs to be given. Just one day needs to be made after the month of Ramadan. Similarly, if a person ejaculates by kissing, fondling, or self-induced, these are all also means of necessitating the qada. Vomiting is a common question. So there's two situations in which vomiting would break the fast. Number one, if a person purposely vomits a mouthful. You vomit a mouthful purposely, meaning, for example, someone sticks something down the throat and they gag, and then they vomit and it's a mouthful, and it's a lot. That would break the fast. That's one. Second is if a person purposely swallows a mouthful, meaning the vomit was coming out. For example, if a vomit is coming, then a person should let it come out. That wouldn't break the fast. If a person feels nauseous or whatever and feels like vomit is coming, then that's fine. As far as protecting your fast is concerned, you should let that vomit come out, and nothing will affect your sawm and your fast. The wudu will break, that's fine. A person can go make wudu after that. But let's say the vomit was coming, inadvertently it was coming, but now he swallows it back and it's a mouthful. This would break the fast. That's why he said that if it's coming out, you should let it come out. If you take it back in and it's a mouthful, how do you tell something is a mouthful? If it's hard to keep it down. If you feel like your cheeks are bulging, that means it's a mouthful. Another example, if a person does not start the fast at all, it's a grave sin. If a person is supposed to fast and they do not fast, they're oblivious, they don't fast, they don't want to fast, whatever. After Ramadan, Allah Ta'ala gave them tawfiq. They made tawbah. So now the question is, do they just make up the days they missed? Does that come with the kaffärah as well? So the ruling is that they just have to make up the fast. Someone never started a fast at all, they never did a fast, or they didn't do the fast of that day, then they only have to make up that one day. Also, breaking the fast due to a medical need. If there's a medical need, meaning you started the day, everything was fine. Now all of a sudden a person has extreme fever and he's unable to go forward through the day. He needs to take some sugars in, needs some water, some liquids in his body. So the doctor, a Muslim doctor, says that, okay, this is a situation, he asks some scholar for the ruling. They say, okay, in such a situation it's fine. Then if this person does take the medication, then he will only have to make up the 1 day of fast. Some examples of qada and kaffara, that you have to make up the fast, plus you have to give the kaffara. What the kaffara is, that's coming inshallah. Deliberately eating or drinking that which gives bodily benefit. Deliberately eating. He knows he's fasting, he knows the time of fast. If the sunset is not here yet, he knows all of this, and he just says, let me try some of these samosas that just got fried. So he eats that. This will necessitate qada plus kaffara. Similarly, smoking or vaping, these things will also necessitate both. Having intercourse knowing that one is fasting, that also necessitates qada and kaffara. Both spouses will have to give the kaffara. Both spouses will have to give kaffara. There's no family discount here. Now, what is the kaffara? Number one, fasting for 2 consecutive months. Fasting for 2 consecutive months, that is the first kaffara. If a person is able to, and he has the able to, again means that if you are considered someone who must fast in the month of Ramadan, that means you're able to fast 2 consecutive months as well. And the idea of kaffara is that it should deter you as well. Right? That if a person knows that, okay, if I do this, this is what the recompense will be, or this is what I'll have to do. So it's supposed to have, there is supposed to be a meaning of deterrence over here. Or feeding 60 needy people 2 meals in a day. If you feed 60 needy people 2 meals in the day, that will also be fulfilling. Or if a person finds one miskin, one person who is poor, who is in need, and he feeds that one person over the course of 60 days, that can also be done. Now, when we said that a person, if he does such and such thing, then his fast broke, right? Now, in these cases, let's say, for example, it was a case of mistakenly eating. If it was a case of mistakenly eating, we said that the fast is broken. Now, what does he do the rest of the day? Does he become the official food tester in the house now? The way mine is broken anyways. I have to do one qada. Might as well make sure the salt is good for today. No. Rather, you imitate the fasting people. Imitate meaning, we act as if we're fasting. So if you broke it by eating once, doesn't mean you say, okay, here, bring the chai also for the evening and lunch is also. No. You act as if you're fasting and you do not eat for the rest of the day. That is obligatory, it's wajib. Or the situation when a lady becomes pure after her menses or postnatal. Meaning if during the day, let's say for example 10 o'clock, the menses stopped, or the nifas and postnatal bleeding stopped during the middle of the day, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever. Meaning before that day, the menses was carrying on. Now that the menses has stopped, what does she do? So she acts as if she is a sa'imah, one who is fasting, and she also abstains from food. Does that count as her fast? No, it does not. 1 day must be made up. It will be made up after the month of Ramadan. But for the rest of the day, she will not consume any food. Or another example, that a child became baligh and mature after the day started. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock during that day, the child became baligh. So now, he will again act as if he is fasting. He will not consume food. But after the month of Ramadan, in his case, he will not have to make up 1 day of fast, because it was never there to begin with. But the rest of the day, he should act as if he is fasting. Common things that we may assume that it may break the fast, but in reality it does not break the fast. Number one, forgetfulness. This is a rahmah of Allah Ta'ala, especially for the Sa'imun. Many other ibadat, if a person forgetfully does something, it does break. For example, a person is in salah and he forgetfully passes when? So this will break the salah, this will break the wudu as well. So forgetfulness it's not across the board in all the ibadah. This is a special rahmah of Allah Ta'ala, that for the fasting person, Allah Ta'ala has overlooked the forgetfulness completely. Neither is there any sin, nor do you have to make up any qada. Nor does a person have to make up the fast after the month of Ramadan. So a person forgetfully ate. Often this happens in the beginning days of Ramadan. We're still getting acclimated, still getting used to it. So a person, it's his habit, every time he leaves the masjid or he comes into the masjid, he drinks from the water fountain. So as his habit, he's leaving after Dhuhr and he takes a sip. And then he remembers, oh, I was fasting. So what's the status of his fast? It's still valid, it's still intact. He does not have to make up a qada. Now, if a person forgetfully is eating, what should you do? Do you tell him stop or don't stop? So the fuqaha, the jurists, they mention that if it's a person who is weak in nature, then leave him. Don't tell him anything. If it's a weaker person, then this is rahmatullah ta'ala, let him be. But if he is a strong person, then you should let him know that, hey brother, you're fasting. Another thing that does not break the fast, wet dreams. Or applying oil, perfume, lotion, balm, all these bodily things, topical usages of creams and oils, these do not break the fast. Or if a person draws blood, if you go to draw blood. Now drawing blood for some people could be considered makruh, meaning if it leads to a weakness. If it leads to weakness, then you should not draw blood whilst you're fasting. But does drawing blood in itself, does drawing blood break the fast? No, it does not. And part of drawing blood would be cupping. So if you have an appointment for cupping, it's best that it's done before or after the month of Ramadan, not during the month of Ramadan. If a person lives in a dusty place or he works in an area, for example, construction workers, a lot of dust flies. So inadvertently, this dust may be going into his mouth. Does that break the fast? No, it does not. Or concentrated oxygen. Concentrated oxygen, if he goes to the hospital for some reason and that's what's administered, this also would not break the fast. Another thing, merely tasting food. A person just puts it on the tip and then they take it out. So they just taste it, merely meaning that they didn't. Sometimes we say chakna means one samosa is chakna, right? You're tasting, that's not called eating a samosa. Right? So that's not what we're saying here. Merely tasting means you put on the tongue and take it out. This would be makruh. Unnecessarily, this is disliked, that will come. But does it break the fast? No. Or if a person wakes up in the state of major impurity. If a person wakes up in the state of major impurity, that's fine. And he's starting the day of Ramadan or the day of fasting without being in the state of tahara does not affect the fast. So this often happens that couples, for example, during the night it is halal to engage. Now when you wake up and there's a few minutes left for suhoor, what do? So some people are face the dilemma. They say that should we go perform our ghusl first or should we partake of the suhoor? So in that case, a person should just partake of the suhoor first. Partake of the suhoor. Then after that, even once Fajr time comes in, they can go and perform their ghusl. And after that, they go perform their salah. Meaning that it's not a condition, staying in the state of tahara is not a condition for fasting. Or if water enters through the ear, for example, throughout the day, if a person's fasting, you salivate, so you swallow some of that, the phlegm or the saliva a person swallows that. Does that break the fast? No, it does not. Purposely trying to collect it in your mouth, just to purposely collect it and then swallow it, that would be disliked. That is not allowed. But again, that also does not break the fast. Using a miswak, rather it's mustahab, it's preferable. Removing the smell that collects in a person's mouth. That's because of the saliva. Because a person is hungry, that smell that emanates and then that comes into a person's saliva, removing that is mustahab, it's preferred. What are some disliked acts during fasting? As we covered, tasting without a need, or chewing. Just chewing on something. Chewing bubble gum would break the fast. Why? Because it's sugar coated. So that means the sugar is being consumed. So what we mean by chewing over here is, for example, just someone's chewing on cloth or something, or paper. There's nothing really going in, you're just chewing. Or you put something in your mouth and you're just chewing on that. So chewing is makruh for two reasons. One, everyone will say, but look at this person, he's not fasting, he's chewing. Now they don't know that you're not swallowing it, you're still fasting. But why make it seem as if you're not fasting? You shouldn't put anyone else in doubt regarding your a'mal and your good deeds, right? And second, there's a fear that you may not want to swallow it, but accidentally, inadvertently, it may go down your throat. So for these reasons, chewing is also considered to be a disliked makruh act during fast. Or kissing and fondling. This is also makruh. Why? Because it will lead to other things. Again, as we said, sawm is ibadah. Allah Ta'ala has kept these things halal during the night. Preferable acts, eating suhoor, not delaying iftar. Rather, delaying iftar would be makruh. That is the difference between Ahlul Sunnah and Rawafid, the Shia, that they delay their iftar, Ahlul Sunnah do not delay. Ibadah is that when Allah Ta'ala says we do not eat, that we cannot eat, then we do not eat. As soon as Allah Ta'ala says that eat now, ibadah is that we eat. That becomes ibadah. That's what abdiyah means. It's not about me, it's about Allah Ta'ala's rule. Eating suhoor, Rasulullah said, termed suhoor ta'amul barakah. There's barakah, there's blessings in it. So if a person eats little or more, whatever it is, some amount should be consumed. And it should be, preferably should be towards the latter part, the last 1/7 of the night. During that time, a person should partake of the suhoor. What are some valid excuses for missing a fast? One, if a person is traveling, we covered that. Number two, sickness, that also more or less we covered. How about pregnancy or breastfeeding? So pregnancy and breastfeeding in and of themselves are not valid excuses themselves. Just because a lady is pregnant, that does not necessarily mean that she is excused from fasting. Now, if fasting leads to other sicknesses, other complications, be it for her or for the child, then that would allow for her not to fast. So for example, she's in the very early stages of pregnancy, right? Maybe the first month or 6, 7, 8 weeks into it, where at times some people don't even know they're pregnant yet. So during that time, there isn't a real harm or any real challenge at that time. So it may be easier during that time for her to fast, so she should fast. Some ladies are even able to skip one day and do one day. That's how much their health allows them, so then they should do that day. Similarly, breastfeeding. So you can think about how it may work. Some ladies are able to pump some milk from before, and then they can fast during the month. Or at night they pump, so that during the day they're able to fast. So these things a person can do as well. Or extreme old age, which leads to extreme sickness, etc. So because of that, the individual is unable to fast. Chronic illness, that would be another valid excuse for missing a fast. As we mentioned earlier, that just because a person was allowed for a certain day that they don't have to fast, that doesn't mean that they do not have to make up this fast anymore and they can settle for a fidyah. Fidyah, as we have, is only for that person who has absolutely no hope of ever gaining health such that they're able to fast. So that's why we said someone who is in chronic illness, very extreme old age, they're really unable to fast neither today nor is there any hope that they will have the ability to fast later in the future. Such people can give fidyah for each day that is missed. The fidyah for each day missed is the same amount of sadaqatul fitr. This year it will be $8 to $10 amount, around that range. So for each day you have to give that amount. What is the fidyah? As you said, the sadaqatul fitr amount for each missed day. Inshallah, with that, we'll end this presentation. If there's any questions, we can take those, inshallah, and then we'll wrap up with that.
During the month of Ramadan, if a person breaks his fast multiple days, does he have to give the kaffara for each, or?
Very good question. The question is that if a person, let's say, purposely breaks many days of fasting. The reason why I'm saying purposely, because then kaffara would also become necessary. So how many kaffaras must be given? Do you give one kaffara for all the fasts broken purposely, or for every broken fast you have to do a separate kaffara? So the ruling is that only one kaffara has to be done in 2 months of fasting, consecutive fasting as for kaffara. That will be sufficient for all of the fasts which were broken. So a person who breaks his fast purposely, number one, they have to make up those days. Let's say, for example, purposely 5 days were broken. The fast of 5 days were purposely broken. So number one, these 5 days must be covered, the qada of these 5 days. Then after that, 2 months of consecutive fasting must be done. That will be the kaffara for all of these 5 days.
Kaffara is consecutive days, are the qada also consecutive days?
The qadas don't have to be, the question is the qada has to be consecutive, the qadas don't have to be consecutive. Yeah. Can a person take vaccines, shots, injections, all of these things whilst you're fasting? Yes, you can. It's permissible if the vaccine date is for a certain time. Things which are being injected, not through the passages which we spoke about, those would not break the fast. It is permissible. However, as we said, if it leads to weakness, and you're unable to bear that weakness, then there will be makruh to do such a thing. You should not do that. A lot of these vaccine dates are you could reschedule them, so the person should do that. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. We make dua that Allah Ta'ala gives us the tawfiq and the ability, and Allah Ta'ala allows us to reach the month of Ramadan with khair and afiyah and in good health and iman. And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala accepts our Ramadan and our fasting becomes a means of increase in our taqwa. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.